Welcome to the Regenerative Collaborative South Africa. The following is a segment from November's webinar, A Regenerative Future.
Cool. Next up is Sechaba, Senior Lecturer at WITS and founder of Afreetekture, combines indigenous knowledge systems and experimental design to inspire alternative realities in architecture through teaching, research, and practice. Great.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody. I tried to follow the rules and then I just ended up breaking them, Malus. Sorry. It is what it is.
10 minutes is gonna be the rule, though.
Yes, that one I will definitely stick to.
Okay, good.
All right, so I'm going to talk about something that's actually similar to everything that everyone spoke about. My whole talk is about visioning and, thinking about what the future could be for architecture. And I'm specifically going to talk about the cultural aesthetics of sustainability in architecture. So I'll just I'll have a quick overview, a little bit of theory, and 2 quick case studies. So the rationale behind why I'm talking about what I'm talking about. So the aim of the discussion is to explore new modes of cultural expression of so-called sustainable or green architecture in South Africa. So the image on the right, that's the Ernst & Young building, which has a 4-star green rating. And the question for me is, does this building represent a culture that attracts people to this paradigm of green buildings? So the theory that I lean on is basically the theory that talks about how people create meaning. And I draw a lot from cultural neurophenomenology, but also theories in art that talk about the way in which people create new paradigms, new meaning, and how they change from one paradigm to another. I also look a lot at theories from post-colonial theory, and especially people who were also asking questions like, for instance, Frantz Fanon and the other people from post-colonial theory, who are we as Africans going to be once we've found liberation? So the first speaker also kind of touched on this, on, who are we, what do we want, what is our vision for ourselves here in South Africa? And the last person I've got there, Spivak, she basically came up with this term, strategic essentialism, which ultimately just says that you need to come up with strategies to, sort of, in the case of green, for instance, ways of making it attractive. Let's call it that. Ways of making it attractive and recognizing how impressionable human beings are and how they will rather go to Black Friday instead of being part of something like what we're doing right now. So my argument is that 20th century modernism is understood as this movement that was about functionality and rationality, but I believe that we need to think of it differently. This thing that has basically given us the world that we live in today, all of us are now talking about climate change and sustainability because of what the 20th century has done. People have not, in my opinion, framed that movement correctly. I believe we need to frame it as a cultural movement instead of seeing it as the scientific movement. And there are architects that I believe were the leaders of this cultural movement, like this guy, for instance. His name is Le Corbusier. But what people don't know about Le Corbusier is that in order for him to be one of the people to bring about this cultural movement called modernism, he went through an artistic and creative process. The outcomes of it was this philosophy and these ideas about functionality, functionalism, etc. But the process of creating this new reality was very creative, very artistic. So he's known for somebody who paints and draws and sketches and fantasizes, basically. And that's how, he fantasized modernity into being him and other people. Another person who people don't really recognize as being someone who creates worlds is Steve Jobs. We again look at him as some sort of a technocrat, but he was the first person, for instance, to introduce a kind of social or cultural understanding of technology. I mean, for instance, this particular image where he presented the iconic iPhone, it was actually more of a cultural process that he was introducing us to. He was on stage, he kind of drew us out of our normative lives and created this whole new world, and we were sold. We wanted to be part of and buy into this new wave of modernity. And when you have an iPhone or you have whatever, you're part of this new culture. So my argument is that these two people are demonstrating to us that we need to think deeply about the way in which we create meaning. And if we can create a compelling enough meaning in this domain of sustainability and architecture that can attract people so that they want to participate and see that as a reality that they want to be part of. So in my practice, this is exactly what I'm trying to achieve. I'm trying to explore an African cultural modernity in architecture. And I'm doing the exact same thing that these people were doing, going back to culture, trying to understand through art and artistic means ways to create a world or a reality. And aesthetics comes into that very much. Aesthetics is not just about the building's going to be pink or the building's going to be yellow. It's actually talking about human perception and the way in which people are drawn to certain things in reality or in the world. I think biomimicry kind of goes into that a little bit more, but I would argue that human senses are more attracted to certain things in contemporary time today than they are to other things. I mean, people are on their cell phones so much compared to other stimuli. So my practice really is about trying to explore different aesthetic and cultural phenomena that we can draw on to create an alternative reality that is framed within sustainability that could be a bit more compelling. So the translation of this into architecture, what does it mean to be an African in the 21st century and going into the future? What is a futuristic African? So I took an image of a First Nation Khoi woman, which is on the far left. And then I took that and processed it through a generative AI tool and combined it with some of those previous images from my aesthetic explorations that I showed you, and began to generate images like this. So they sort of like, these are futuristic images. These are AI futuristic images of African people. But the materials you can see on her head, maybe that's like recycled plastic. The beads around her neck are also maybe recycled materials, but kind of creating a new language of culture that hopefully can attract people. Same thing with this woman here. Maybe the clothes that she's wearing are made from recycled materials that has been upcycled, but upcycled in such a way that we're catering to her emotional and cultural needs. And the same thing would apply to the building around. Don't ask me what it's made of. It's just supposed to be evocative. The same thing with this woman here, trying to draw us into a parallel reality or paradigm that is meant to turn people's heads away from Black Friday and towards a future that might be, more attractive. Here, it's the same kind of speculation. So I took those First Nations AI images and I put them into a contemporary sort of urban context to test out what that future could be like. So imagine a future where, yes, these look like kind of normal buildings, except they are a lot more colorful and, taking reference from those aesthetics of those First Nation people. But the idea here really, rather than just thinking of it from a functionalist point of view, is thinking of it from how do we draw people away from the current paradigm into this one? Can we use the same mechanisms that the godfathers of modernism, and even the ones of apartheid who kind of envisaged a particular reality and paradigm, can we use those tools to envisage an alternative, even more attractive paradigm and allow that to disseminate and it infuse itself into contemporary culture to such an extent that it can be an even more compelling reality? So for instance, the woman on the right, she's wearing these glowing beads. Imagine those glowing beads are a kind of digital wearable device that maybe begins to talk to you in terms of giving you certain information, or it communicates with other people, because beads originally were things that communicated with people from a cultural point of view. So I think my statement, my overarching statement would be, through creativity, we could win the cultural war for the future of our species, because I believe that what we're fighting is not a technocentric war or just an economic or commercial war. I think it's a cultural war. And that's it from me. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for watching this video segment from November's webinar, A Regenerative Future. Like and subscribe for more inspirational content.